Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Makbool with you at BTB World. In today's show, we will be taking a look at three very important stories. The first is in reference to the Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, who along with senior government officials in a press conference today talked about PTI chief Imran Khan, calling him a fraud and the biggest liar in Pakistan's history, reiterating what he said earlier in an interview with The Guardian. This is, of course, in reference to what has been going on from the PTI leadership and the ouster of the former Prime Minister Imran Khan. And since then, the kind of narrative that has been brought about by the PTI leadership, especially since the aftermath of the two audio leaks in which reference has been made to the cipher, which the PTI chairman has used multiple times to talk about a US-led conspiracy that he claims existed, and which is why he was removed from a motion of no confidence. Then when we take a look at the kind of statements that have been coming in, they also include talk against state institutions, particularly the armed forces, and their role in the political domain of the country, again something that has been repeatedly denied by the armed institutions and the political setup in the government. When we take a look at Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's talk today, it seems quite clear that he has been referring to this particular dynamic and to the kind of dangers that this represents and the impact that it has had on the society. And of course, this is something that we have seen in terms of the politicization that currently exists in the country and the kind of damage that it has so far done. We're going to be taking a look at what his press conference meant, what was so important and necessary about this press conference, and how it's going to impact relations moving forward in terms of the political dynamic within the parliament and within the political domain of the country as well, and what it means for the PTI leadership, how the government and the PDM wants to move forward, because we of course know a legal inquiry was approved by the cabinet with regards to the audio leaks that surfaced earlier. That is going to be our first segment of the show today. Our next one is going to take a look at what the Islamabad High Court has talked about regarding that political disputes must be resolved in Parliament. This is what the Islamabad High Court Chief Justice Mr. Atharin Millar talked about, that the matter of acceptance of resignations of the MNAs of PTI is a political one, and the right forum for such disputes is the Parliament. There was a lot of talk in terms of what exactly does the PTI leadership want within this plea that was newly generated as well, and in terms of the kind of narrative that they're talking about, do they even have a commitment to the political setup or the parliament within the country? And if so, they need to give more than just assurances, and they need to show that in action. There was also discussion from the Islamabad High Court Chief Justice with regards to the matter of the Speaker of the National Assembly and his decision regarding the acceptance of resignation, what needs to be done about it, referring also to previous decisions of the NA Speaker under the PTI leadership. So we're going to be taking a look at this and whether or not we are going to be seeing the PTI's decision of actually joining in the Parliament, because this is something that has been observed by the Islamabad High Court, in which he has talked about how the court cannot be used for political setups and that the plea will only be accepted if PTI goes to the Parliament tomorrow. So when we take a look at this, we're going to be considering whether or not that is the possibility. The PTI Council has said that the party has not decided on the matter yet. And at the end, we're going to take a look at what is happening in Peshawar. Primary school teachers of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa held a big demonstration against the PTI government. They have talked about their delaying tactics, their failure to fulfill their promises, and their failure to upgrade various teachers within the primary school setup, creating a disparity within them, and that this is something which is causing a lot of unrest to the people, considering, of course, the economic woes and inflation of the country as well. So that is what we're going to be taking a look at the end of the show today. For this and more, as always, I've been joined in the studios by senior analysts Farooq Patafi and Raja Faisal. And for our first two segments, we've been joined online by Mr. Abdul Moiz, who's a political analyst, and Dr. Niaz Murtaza, also a senior analyst. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us today. Let me first start with you, Farooq. When we take a look at of course, the kind of press conference that the Prime Minister has done and the kind of things that he has said, it is something that he has very openly spoken about in a recent interview with The Guardian as well, and even now has really spoken his mind and expressed his opinion regarding the PTI chief and the kind of impact that he has had or his leadership has had on the political and social dynamics of the country. When we look at why this particular press conference was important or necessary, what do you make of the Prime Minister actually coming out and talking about this issue?
Right, Sana, thank you very much for the opportunity. First of all, while newsmakers actually, journalists actually pick up the headlines that are most appealing to the readers, what I found in that presser was his interaction with the media. And I think that was very important because the Prime Minister wanted to actually set that record straight regarding the performance of his government, and particularly what measures are being taken regarding floods, regarding economy, and other so many crises. But you're right, I think that the Prime Minister was on the money when he actually pointed out that what Imran Khan Sahab was doing in that audio clip amount itself to a conspiracy to harm Pakistan's image and Pakistan's interest. Now, where very respectfully, where I disagree with the whole idea that he was actually expounding upon was, that it amounts to any kind of sedition. Right? I think that rulers throughout the history have actually used various measures to manipulate things, excuse me, to their advantage. And this time, this is what happened. Calling it treason, of course, there's another very important nuance that you have to actually look at. He called it treason, not high treason. Earlier, Defense Minister actually spoke about Article 6, which actually deals with high treason. But the Prime Minister said that this is going to be probed, and if found guilty, he will be given punishment, right? So at this moment, the problem is that when we use such heavy words, it actually plays to the polarization in the society. Let us face it, what Imran Khan did was not commendable. It was a bad thing. And then, of course, Pakistan might be paying heavy price for that as well. So because of that, of course, if you break law or if you do something wrong, there should be consequences. But then you have to handle it very effectively.
Absolutely. Dr. Niaz, of course, when we take a look at the kind of actions that have been pointed out and the kind of statements that have come in, it seems, of course, that the government is quite sure that they want to proceed with some sort of legal inquiry or action towards the PTI chief. But of course, it's important, that the people who are actually responsible, who have actually come out, are the ones that are going to face the consequence. Are we going to see that happening with regards to the PTI chief? And then when we talk about proportionate consequence, that's also important in terms of when we look at what has been said or done, that the kind of consequence that have been meted out, as Farooq was saying, are also proportionate to what has been done and not blown out of proportion.
Well, I mean, I agree with Farooq that at a political level, you can condemn it, you can analyze it, reach your conclusions that, there was something fishy going on. What was most surprising in the audio, or damning for me in the audio, was not what was said, because that was vague enough. You can twist and turn it in different directions. But what was really damning was what was not said, which was that there wasn't a single word about, any kind of US conspiracy. Here was a government which, according to its own account, had just one day earlier received news that it was facing a US conspiracy to topple it, and it was sitting so relaxed, people chatting about how to, take benefit of it, and nobody was really expressing any concern that we are facing a conspiracy from a US superpower. So at a political level, I think it's a damaging leakage. But then, to try to legalize it and try to, make cases against PTI and Imran Khan, I think the government is on dubious grounds, and it's faced a lot of setbacks. It
So,
tried,
Dr. Niaz, are you saying that legal action should not be taken?
Yeah, I think it will be hard. First of all, it's an illegal leakage. You can't use this kind of a tape in court. There's very strict
Right.
rules about that. The Supreme Court has, laid them out. And then, what was said, it doesn't, I don't think, amounts to a clear admission. So, it pushed a terrorism case against him based on a speech that got thrown out. This sedition case against Shehbaz Gilil, and through that, I think they're trying to pin Imran Khan as well. I don't think that will fly out. Even the contempt case has been thrown out. So I think the government has to be very careful. I think there's a very big, issue which is out there, which the government is not doing anything, which is, the constitutional violation on April 3rd, which even the Supreme Court has now said that it was a violation of court. So they should look at, whether there are any clauses short of Article 6, because again, Article 6 is a very serious thing which carries death penalty or life penalty, and I don't think what happened on April 3rd deserves that. But short of that, if there are any conspiracy laws or any other laws, I think that's what the government should be, falling upon, because that was
Right,
so
but
wrong.
just to,
Niaz?
hang on, just to qualify or clarify my position, Sana, I'm not against any kind of inquiry. I think that it is important that there should be an inquiry, and I think that had a minister actually made this statement, a political leader, that would have been a different thing. All I'm talking about is prejudging the outcome, right? When you actually say that to me it is, treason, that actually complicates this situation, because then your rivals can play with it.
Yeah.
And Imran Khan Sahab has admitted to playing with things, right? Even in this audio clip.
Sana, with your permission, let me go towards Jafri Saab. I just wanted to pose a question to him related to it. If we assess the obviously diplomatic damage which is caused, especially by audio leaks, especially when our Prime Minister is mentioning in that presser that one of the friendly nations ambassador came to meet him, and he said that it is really hard for him to talk to our Prime Minister in PMO because of audio leaks, and obviously he had his own concerns over whether it's safe to talk to Prime Minister or not. How damaging it is for the country, and should this not be leading towards a proper probe, that why did it take place, sir?
Particularly the leaks, not merely this leak. Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity. I think it is widely known that the Prime Minister's office anywhere in the world is not a very private space. So when diplomats enter a Prime Minister's office, they do so knowing that they are being watched or listened to. But the embarrassment here is not that they were being listened to, which is obviously a problem in itself, but perhaps not as much in a country like Pakistan as it would be in a healthier democracy. But it's the bigger embarrassment is the leak. Because if these were leaks traded in exchange for leaks of Imran Khan, that in itself is embarrassing, because it means that there is a closed cell of people who can decide when to embarrass the Prime Minister, when to embarrass a former Prime Minister. They are clearly unaccountable. And we are trading conversations on whether it's a leak or if it's a hack, because it means two different things. It means that people have the authority to tap a phone in the Prime Minister office, but then have been tampered with, and those tappings have been hacked and released. Or if you want to investigate whether that tapping itself is allowable or not. So we're dealing in pedantry right now. Obviously, both those things are quite embarrassing. And if they're going to be handled in such a tit-for-tat kind of political tool way that in itself is embarrassing, I think Asif Zardari handled it best when he was president, where he would, according to Steve Cole, he'd enter the room and say hello to the DGISI every morning, because he just assumed that he could hear him everywhere. So I think Pakistan has a certain history, and within that history, this just kind of proves a lot of points that people, especially civilians, have been making. Shahid Khan Abbasi, when interviewed, he basically was of the opinion that it would be ludicrous for you to think that you were having a private conversation in the Prime Minister's house. That's how I operated. And that's how everyone seemed to. It's sad, but it is the state of affairs.
Right, Moise, since we are talking about investigating these leaks or hacks or whatever you may call it, a few days ago we had another legal expert in the program, and he was saying that perhaps there isn't enough legal or constitutional ground to probe it. Can you actually help us understand the framework that might be needed to probe such high, high-level leaks? How to actually probe it? What laws actually govern that?
And Mr. Moise, if you could add to that, you said it's embarrassing quite a few times, but who exactly is it embarrassing for? Because I really don't understand who's embarrassed at the moment.
Well, it's embarrassing for the chief executive of a state to be so conveniently tapped and then so conveniently exposed. It's obviously embarrassing to the Prime Minister and his cabinet. I'm sure they didn't want to be heard talking about Mariam Nawaz's relative. I'm sure they didn't want to be heard discussing amongst each other with 6 resignations to accept, just like I'm sure Imran Khan didn't want to be heard talking about what to play with. So it's obviously embarrassing for civilians. It's obviously not embarrassing for people who have never yet been held accountable, who are supposedly the people with their finger on the record button. So I think that's where I stand. As far as the high-powered legality is concerned, Farooq Saab, we like to think of a lot of people as being larger than life, but the Prime Minister's office is the fountainhead of all intelligence apparatus and all, whether they are civilian or military. So he would just have to constitute a regular fact-finding or inquiry committee under any secretary of his nomination, and they would, on paper, de facto, be de jure, have the power to summon whoever they sought to summon, and they would have the power to inquire as to, how this happened in the first place. Because no matter how blasé Imran Khan was about saying, yeah, they record everyone, they record me as well, I have nothing to hide, it's really not that simple. The Prime Minister cannot thus be handled, and his conversations cannot thus be monitored without any answerability or without his knowledge. It happens around the world, but the President of the United States, when he talks on the phone with someone else, that president knows that his call is being heard by people who are protecting his interest. When he is on another kind of line, he also knows that he has privacy. That is just not a delineation you can make in Pakistan. So you can't, Imran Khan used to love blurring that line. But as he has learned now to his own cost, that it's really not that simple.
Right. With your permission, Sana, let me go back to Dr. Niaz Mirza. Dr. Saab, since we are talking about this, and when Moise was talking about it, he mentioned tapping. There is a concern regarding how this actually went down, because the conversation doesn't seem to be happening on a telephone. We don't even know whether there was a mobile phone in the room or not, whether there was a physical bug involved or not. Do you think that it is essentially leading to some kind of impression that there was monitoring going on, or there is technology of bad elements from outside the system can also manage to do it?
Well, I think that all will come out when there is a proper inquiry. There are so many different technologies available now. Tapping or through mobile phones, hacking, anything is possible. So that's why we need a proper inquiry. But the question is who will hold that inquiry, because that may mean that the inquiry is held by some of the same people or entities which may be under suspicion of having done this whole thing. So that will be the biggest issue for the government to decide in terms of who to trust with this inquiry, and whether they will do a proper job. But clearly, the government is embarrassed, but then, it's also, this is a very technical and sophisticated job that has to be done. So certainly, the security agencies should also be embarrassed that, it was their job to make sure that the Prime Minister's office was secure from such leaks. So they've also failed in their job. And ultimately, if some heads have to roll, it will not be the Prime Minister's head or anybody on the civilian side, political side. It will be, within the agencies that were responsible for it. So I think it covers everybody. And
right,
absolutely.
Mr. Moise, and we'll come back to you, Faisal. Mr. Moise, when we take a look at the fact that when we talk about legal action, we discuss this, and Dr. Niaz was also mentioning this, and we were talking about this with a legal expert earlier as well, in terms of how difficult or next to impossible it is to bringing in the audio leak as evidence in the legal action taken against any political party or leadership. If that is the case, so if we take that out of the equation at the moment, What sort of impact do you think it has had on the political parties? It doesn't seem to have caused much in terms of the statements coming in from the PTI. They seem to be owning it, in fact, in a different kind of way. And then if we look at the kind of narrative that has been going around and the kind of popularity they enjoy, it seems perhaps that despite the audio leaks, the government or the PDM right now cannot really use this stance to kind of prove or talk about the flaws or the problems with regards to the PTI leadership or what they had planned to do.
And there's a bigger point here that most of these things seem like a godsend for the ruling coalition, but it seems that it doesn't have the capacity to exploit it politically. Why would you think that is?
I think if more information on Imran Khan had come out on that Friday that the hacker supposedly promised to do so, then I think the PDM would have been able to make something of it. But they would have only made something of it within their own support group because, like you mentioned, these are not surreptitious recordings, do not have any legal standing in terms of evidence. So they are left to the court of the people to decide whether they want to take their leadership seriously or not after something about them has been exposed. And as we have seen in this country, that is a moral or ethical choice, and we're not very good at making the right moral or ethical choices. Amir Liaquat Hussain, now deceased, continued to have a very healthy career as a religious scholar after he was exposed on television as having said some less than proper things. Um, I think anywhere else in the world, after such exposure, the moral and ethical thing you would see instantly would be the resignation of the heads of institutions responsible for protecting the cybersecurity of the Prime Minister's house. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it would be easier to see a Prime Minister resign than that happening, actually. But certainly, we're not good at these things. And because we're not good at these things, the people have a perverse relationship with morals and ethics, and they start defending almost the indefensible, which we saw with Imran Khan when there was a rumor about a lewd video supposedly coming out. There were people doing pre-preparation about how it was justifiable or how it was fake or how it was, it was somehow a conspiracy against him. And we saw it
Deep
here as
fake.
well. He's saying, iske saath khelna hai. And he is clearly talking about making a mockery out of the entirety of his supporters, and he is also making a mockery out of his claim of conspiracy. Do you see it making a difference? Do you see anyone who
Absolutely.
used to support him
That's my
stop
point.
supporting him?
Right.
And
Yes,
Doc-
Faisal.
so
Dr. Niaz,
you know,
Dr. Niaz, very quickly earlier you have mentioned that there are obviously other ways of getting into somebody's phone or hacking somebody's phone, or if somebody else is already recording all of these audios, then hacking into that phone. There can be other forms of producing all of these audio leaks which we are seeing right now. And obviously it is embarrassing for the institutions as well and the political parties involved in it. It is embarrassing for all of them. Can we say, can we say that you were actually highlighting the fact that an international conspiracy can be behind it to obviously make everyone embarrassed in Pakistan? Why I'm saying this, because we know that our eastern neighbor last year procured a software called Pegasus that can get into anyone's phone anytime.
Well, nothing can be ruled out. It's quite possible that a foreign power might be doing it. But once you mention the Eastern power, then I think they would be less interested in what happens in the Prime Minister's office, because they know nothing significant happens here. All the juicy stuff happens in the neighboring city, or within one particular neighborhood of Islamabad, a little bit distant from the Prime Minister's office. So I think they would be more interested in that. So if you are asking me to take a guess, because that's all I can give, I would say it's probably local hands who are doing it. And the way it's tit for tat, and the embarrassing parts of it. My suspicion, I don't have any proof, would be on local hands. But then obviously all this will come out when you do a proper inquiry. And I think that's important. Inquiry, holding an inquiry is important in terms of, fixing the leakage. But, in terms of taking it to the court and then trying to do a legal a case on it, I'm doubtful about that.
And particularly an inquiry whose finding actually we don't again find through leaks, but they are actually willingly shared with the people of Pakistan.
Yeah.
I say this because two of our very important secreted documents that were until then secret, Hamudur Rahman Commission report and Abbottabad Commission report, both actually leaked and they ended up in foreign hands. One was carried out by an Indian newspaper, the other one was actually carried by the Al Jazeera's website. So there seems to be a possibility that, although I understand that locally, Dr. Saab, we keep on talking about, of course, in Khalai Makhlook, this organization, that organization. But with due respect, there is always a possibility that it is very easy to actually bring in a small transmitter and throw it into a room or somehow plant it somewhere where perhaps IB cannot find it. It isn't that difficult, is it? So must we always suspect the high and mighty, not low level techies doing their job?
Well, I'm not ruling out a foreign hand, as I said. It's possible. It's not impossible. I'm not ruling out anybody, but in terms of, assigning probabilities, if you ask me to take a guess, a hunch, I would say that it's more likely to be, a local hand. But then, an inquiry only can, fix that. But then who will do that if some of the people who are supposed to hold the inquiry might be under suspicion of having done it?
Right. Mr. Moise, there's of course the development of the Islamabad High Court as well with regards to the plea by PTI in terms of the resignations accepted by the National Assembly Speaker, 11 out of the 123 that they wanted to be accepted altogether. And this, of course, resulted in a conversation between the PTI Council and the Islamabad High Court Chief Justice, in which a lot of issues with regards to jurisdictions of various institutions were discussed. And it was quite interesting to see that we're still having these conversations in terms of what the court needs to do or what the parliament needs to do or which disputes need to be resolved within the court and outside of the court, which may seem to be quite simple and quite easily understood by the political leadership as to what needs to be discussed in the parliament. What's important here that I want to understand from your point of view is when we take a look at the PTI stance, there is the discussion, of course, that the National Assembly Speaker should have accepted all resignations because they were conditional and not genuine. When we take a look at such measures in which the political parties decide according to the party policy, decide according to their own political personal gains, which is quite obvious in the audio leaks as well that we're talking about. Isn't that something that needs to be questioned when we take a look at the overall representation or responsibility from members of the parliament as to them representing their constituencies, which was a big point of discussion?
Sorry, can you repeat that the question again?
So my question with regards to the parliament and the people representing the parliament with regards to what their actions need to be based upon. Of course, there is the political aspect of what the party policy decides, which they're claiming is the fact that they wanted to protest the ouster of the former premier.
Right.
And so that was what their basis was. But shouldn't that basis be on the representation of the parliament? Yes, go ahead.
You're talking about the resignations of the PTI members.
Yes.
I think the best example is Ali Mohammad Khan. And he gave this, the speech which referenced God about 100 times and the sacred duty of politics and how he could not carry it forward in the face of an American conspiracy and how this beautiful house was being sullied and the will of the people was being interfered with. And he wrote because there is this understanding that you need to write a resignation. So he wrote into the resignation where the PTI had printed out forms for everyone to write their name and their NA seat number in. He added a note saying, I cannot be part of this American conspiracy and I hereby resign. And that chap's now in court saying, I was just making a political statement. So I'm going back to when you said, things that are morally or ethically normally in any normal society, they would be your ruin. In Pakistan, they just pass as a normal day. Uh, By what standard does Ali Muhammad Khan stand up and say that my party was asking me to do something and I personally wasn't asking of it? That's why the PDM started this process in the first place. That's why they wanted everyone to come and confirm their resignations, because they felt that if there have been lots of people who have been herded into resigning, and
Right.
there was a chap from Sindh who went up and said exactly that, and the PTI suspended him, and they then later cancelled his membership. So how do you blow hot and cold on this is beyond me. And
Right.
yes.
Yeah, Moiz, but another way to approach Sana's question is particularly focusing on the parliament, because the Honorable Justice has also mentioned that. It seems that somewhere on its way to restoration of democracy, Pakistan's parliament became dysfunctional. I remember People's Party's tenure at that time. Iftikhar Chaudhry Sahab was doing everything to undermine the parliament's will. But later on, gradually, we saw 5 years of PMLN, where again Parliament would hardly convene and hardly any business would be done. Then PTI has 4 years. Once again, that kept on happening. We are not merely talking about what happened at the end. It was a culminating point, but the dysfunction was there. Is there a way to actually revive the Parliament, in the current environment? Because it seems that half of the Parliament is sitting outside.
I think the lack of respect of the parliament was started after the People's Party era, because in the People's Party, whether it was Raja Pervez Ashraf, who couldn't believe he'd become prime minister, or it was Yusuf Zagilani, who you could accuse of the same thing, they would turn up every day. Every time there was a session, they'd be there in a suit and a tie, and
Yeah,
they'd try to look their best.
remember
And
that.
but then after that, Nawaz Sharif was never interested in going to parliament. It was beneath him, and he would only turn up to major budgetary sessions or to major sessions. He would send this one chap, I remember, I don't remember his name, but he was the parliamentary affairs minister, and he would just try to field questions for 23 absent treasury members every day. They made the PMLN made a joke of parliament. And this was the time when Imran Khan was newly pumped with establishmentarian support, so Nawaz Sharif wasn't really bothered about meeting his own parliamentarians. So I remember there were MNAs who didn't get a one-on-one meeting with Nawaz Sharif for, when you asked them when was the last time you met him one-on-one, they would sort of go blank and then say something like 3 years or 2 years. So this is back when it started. And then along came Imran Khan, and he tried to turn up once, and because they didn't let him speak, he was so jaded by it that he just preferred being on a container. He never went to parliament again. So when you have two complete sessions of parliament that are basically run by people who dislike the basic concept of democracy and don't have it within their own parties,
Right.
this is
But,
the result.
but do they realize that in our form of democracy, Parliament is all source of political legitimacy and democratic legitimacy?
They realize it too late. I remember when the dharna happened. It was Zardari, it was ex-President Zardari and his People's Party who came up to Nawaz Sharif and told him to call a session of parliament. And it was then in parliament where Tahir al-Qadri's cousins of Imran Khan and Imran Khan himself were ridiculed. And I remember there were day-by-day sessions streamed on PTV where everyone got together in parliament and delivered a rebuke to what was an attack on democracy. And had the People's Party not advised the convening of that session, I don't think the PMLN would ever have thought of it.
Exactly, sir. Dr. Niaz, this statement by obviously Islamabad High Court, which says that political disputes must be resolved within the Parliament. How beautiful this statement is, and how can we see it in the current scenario as well as in the recent past? How should we take it, and should we take it a very positive one? And isn't it the time that we should be celebrated that even our courts are saying that the Parliament obviously has the ultimate power, and it is the time that we must expect everything to be resolved within the parliament, sir?
And in fact, Dr. Niaz, shouldn't this be given without saying? But I want to also add to this the fact that when we take a look at the court's hearing, there was also discussion about how this plea will not be accepted and will only be considered if the PTI decides to go to the parliament tomorrow, to which the PTI council said that they still haven't decided on the matter. Do you think it's a possibility for PTI to actually do that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I fully agree with this sentiment that, these things should be, decided in Parliament. So, we have a very strange situation now where I think the PTI has one case in the Supreme Court where they're asking why the resignations of about 135 parliamentarians are not being accepted, and simultaneously they have a case in Islamabad High Court from 10 people. Why are resignations have been accepted? So, two completely different lines in two courts. And, the right thing is to, decide everything in the parliament. If they were serious about resigning, there was a way for them to do that, complete the requirements. They should have been written in hand. They should have personally gone, delivered it to the speaker's office, made video clips of that, and then, just circulated it. And then in that case, there would have been no way out for the speaker not to accept them. But it seems that, either the PTI is playing games or they are still in two minds as to what to do. But they clearly don't have an intent to, really leave the parliament. They want to, keep a door open so that they can slip back. And, there was even a hint from Imran Khan that if you, make an inquiry on the conspiracy, then, we are willing to go back to the parliament. And that's what had happened after the Dharna too. I think they went back after the assurance was given that, there will be an inquiry. And even before its results came out. So it's very confusing.
Right, Dr. Zab, sorry to cut you mid-sentence. You said that PTI seems to be in two minds, of two minds. Let me ask you regarding minds as well. Is there not a possibility that collectively PTI actually does want to come back to the system, but it is failing to read Imran Khan's mind, who is actually keeping all the cards very close to his own chest? And it doesn't seem that he is consulting his own constituents from the party for the policy's future.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, with Imran Khan, he can win very easily without spending much money wherever he runs from, some safe seats, for example. But for the other people, it's quite a struggle, because they are on competitive seats. They don't have the profile and stature of Imran Khan. They'll have to spend a lot of money, and there is no assurance that they will win. Whereas Imran Khan, there are at least 1 or 2 dozen seats from where he can.
Right, absolutely. Thank you very much, Dr. Niaz. Unfortunately, we're out of time, and thank you very much, Mr. Abdul Moiz, for joining us and being a part of the debate and talking to us extensively regarding this
issue and, of
course, the political dynamics that we're currently facing in the country. An important issue left to be discussed is, of course, the demonstration by the primary school teachers in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa with reference to the issue of promotion and the failure of the PTI government to fulfill their promises. Another important aspect of this is, of course, the behavior that was meted out of them by the police, which, of course, is also not befitting to teachers. Faisal, when we take a look at this, and when we take a look at, of course, the entire institution, which guarantees the education system of the country, it's extremely important that we have that position and that respect for our teachers. And unfortunately, it's quite a thankless job here. But when we take a look at these protest demonstrations and what they're demanding, there's, of course, the aspect of what needs to be done and how the promises need to be fulfilled. But there's also the aspect of the kind of behavior that needs to be meted out to such protests and the way that they need to be treated, especially keeping in mind that these are, of course, our teachers and they're great assets in the country. What do you have to say on that?
Sanab, obviously, someone who has always advocated the importance of education for our society, for our country, and it was very embarrassing to see the way teachers of a society are being dealt with a very strong fist. Obviously, I'm talking about the KPK government. It shouldn't have happened. Whatever has happened out there, obviously, a protest, it is a legal right of every citizen. And if we talk about the teachers of a society, the matter should be dealt before it reaches on the roads. It was so embarrassing to see pallets being used. Obviously, I'm talking about the tear gas and all of that. It was used against them. They were squeezed in one corner of the road, and obviously they were trying to find a way out of it, and trying to disperse them with a heavy hand. It was very embarrassing. I think still they have time. The KPK government must sit with them, and whatever the demands they hold, teachers should be made sit with them and to talk over them and accept their demands. Obviously, their demand is that since 2013 they were not being upgraded, and it is a genuine demand and it should be accepted. And I always see on social media as well from the PTI handles the importance of the teachers for a society and all of that stuff. What kind of impression them people are taking out of it? It is my question to them.
Right, and it's not just a matter of impression, because of course this is actual behavior that has been meted out to them. So it's really what they're actually doing to the teachers or saying to the teachers themselves, and they're not really respecting them. So it's far beyond that, perhaps. Farooq, when we take a look at this and the kind of narrative that we see coming in from the PTI and their emphasis on the right to protest, their own, of course, protest demonstrations across the country as well, how is it that a genuine protest demonstration from a bunch of school teachers needed such a response from the police?
Right. The first thing, Sana, I want to do is retire one word that we have been, and everyone in Pakistan has been using excessively, that is narratives. I think that there is only three versions of reality. The truth, the falsehood, right, and hypocrisy. And at this moment, hypocrisy is quite visible, right, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. First of all, let me talk about these teachers. These are primary teachers. They are the poorest of the kind. They are the least paid people. They are the most vulnerable because you cannot guarantee the future of school itself. You don't know how much they are making. You know about an average school teacher, high school teacher actually makes, and then think that what they must be paying a primary teacher, right? And after that, because of their vulnerability, and these are not only teachers, they are also on the forefront of all the campaigns of the government. For example, when government actually goes for polio campaign, in aid of the other health workers and others, these teachers actually go from door to door, and they are almost killed by the extreme weather, and they are heroes. And despite that, even terrorists target them. Then in elections also, they have to uproot their lives, and they have to go and become, ROs and all these, low-level functionaries and election machinery. And these people have been sacrificing so much. One, the party that actually claims and believes and keeps on actually pretending it's a right to protest and to assemble anywhere, actually can go to such a level. The very party which actually in 2014 gave us such a headache that they were sitting in Islamabad paralyzing the capital for months.
Right.
And this is the very same party which actually was ready to burn down Islamabad just back in May, this May, when they were coming here, and they said that such a vicious use of tear gas. And what was happening there today? They were using the very same tear gas, the same kind of brute force they allege other people were using against them, and then pellet guns and all that kind of, heavy-handed tactics. So who is going to actually take stock of this? Where is anybody who can call out this hypocrisy? Now on social media, I've seen a couple of messages where people have called it halal shelling, that this is acceptable, right? Somehow, no, it was actually to call out the hypocrisy. But my problem is also, and earlier, I asked Moiz this question, that the PDM government is handed this, many such instances on a platter. Why is it that they haven't been able to exploit it? I think social media And management of talking points is important as well, because today I was watching television channels, especially because it is PTI which is involved in this brutality. All other parties could have used it as an effective talking point, but I did not see their guest actually appearing on television and using it against PTI. So what exactly is going on? They'll have to, PDM will have to actually put their own house in order, and will have to work it out, all the talking points, so that they can hammer on and call them out. At this moment, what happened in Peshawar, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, was obnoxious and it is shameful. I think I'm not that much worried about leaks, as I am the treatment meted out to this very poor teachers who are actually doing their job, and they're asking for just I wanted to actually quote Faz Ahmad Faz here, Jeene di nukkad te khane da tukkar, izzat da tukkar, right? Only better food and some kind of respect. If you can't actually give them that, you are actually bulldozing the future of the country.
Yes, Sana, one-liner. You know, we kept on hearing since 2013, obviously KPK government is with PTI, and we kept on hearing about the educational reforms out there, and to some extent I would agree with them. They have put money into obviously education betterment, and the reforms they introduced out there. It was really good. It was really good. But this happening in there with the teachers is just busting that bubble they have created around it.
Okay,
To
me,
I think
this necessitates only a fragment of a statement. I have always praised whenever PTI has done something good. I don't think that their educational reforms was something to commend.
All right, that's all that we have from the debate. Thank you very much, Farooq and Faisal, for joining us. Of course, indeed, what has happened in KP is quite unfortunate, and just imagine what primary teachers meant to you, and then imagine this treatment being meted out to them. So it's extremely unjustified and condemnable. We'll see you tomorrow. Guys?